Greetings, everybody. Welcome to the newest program on Two Way, Authentic Connections. Two Way's newest live show. It's dedicated to open and honest conversation about men's mental health. Some of you are under the mistaken impression still that Two Way is just about political conversations, and political conversations will always be a big part of Two Way. But we are, as you've seen in the last few days and weeks, introducing to you other programs. And we couldn't be more excited about this one because this topic, as much as anything else, lends itself to the two-way format to let a national conversation, an international conversation take place about this important topic. And we couldn't be more fortunate to have as the folks who will guide you through this conversation. I'm basically in a Ryan Seacrest role today. I'll just tee things off and stay with you to kind of keep things moving, are the co-hosts of this program, which they do now on their own platform, Authentic Connections. They begin sharing these conversations there. Dr. Richard Gabel, a psychiatrist, 40 years experience, professor at NYU School of Medicine, and a distinguished life fellow of the American Psychiatric Association, is here, along with Jeff Singer. He's the creator of Authentic Connections and its original incarnation, and he began having these conversations around men's mental health and his own lived experience all the way back in 2024. Which is eternity ago. Again, we're proud to be part. We're proud to be part of this. And if you're joining the conversation here on the two-way platform, we'd urge you to raise your hand and be part of the conversation. Richard and Jeff will talk for a bit amongst themselves, but then we're going to want your participation. So please raise your hand. And if you're watching on X or YouTube, we're glad to have you here. Perhaps next time you'll join on the platform. And if you're interested in engaging in the chat, we always remind you, peace, love, and understanding is what we're all about. Presumption of grace for all. Do not put smack in the chat. And with that, I'm delighted to turn things over to Jeff and Richard to talk about their partnership, about this program, what their expectations and aspirations are. And I will slither away. Jeff and Richard, so grateful to you both. Over to you.
Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it. Yeah. So just to introduce the program, assuming that most of you are seeing us or meeting us for the first time, I had a crazy idea a couple of years ago that men don't talk about what they're thinking, what they're feeling, what they're going through, and that leaves them isolated and lonely. And I did some research and was stunned to find that not only was the rate of suicides increasing dramatically over the past several years, but that 80% of all suicides are men. And there's a lot of other statistics that I don't want to bore you with today. Happy to get into it at some point, but that was kind of the whole aha moment that there's something going on out there and we need to talk about it, whatever it is. And there are lots of things that need to be talked about, and that nobody does. And I don't know if you want to say anything, Richard, before we dive into.
Yeah, I do think we've got a mission that I think is pretty critical. That we need to get people talking about what's going on in their lives, what's stressing them, seeking at a minimum the help of their friends and loved ones, and when necessary, seeking professional help. And Jeff got this started. It was a great idea. I have the privilege of having joined it, I guess, over the last 6 or 7 months, and we've been doing these episodes. And I really think, I mean, the feedback has been very positive, and I think that the topics we've talked about have been very helpful, useful, and hopefully tonight will be the same.
Yeah, so the format is, and then Richard, let's just dive right into it and do what we do.
Yep.
So the format is that we come up with a topic, and we don't discuss it. We save it for air. So this is an authentic, sincere, just off the cuff kind of conversation. It is unscripted, it is unrehearsed. I have no idea what the heck Richard is going to say or where this conversation is going to go. And that's kind of the fun and the point of it. So today, Richard, we are going to talk about getting sidelined after 50. So there was a Forbes magazine article. Jack Kelly cited that a Bloomberg columnist wrote that what we've been seeing in the job market, nobody wants to openly talk about. People 55 and older are leaving the labor force. In fact, they're not really just leaving the labor force, they're actually getting pushed out. Now, what does pushed out mean? Before we get to that, I want to just say that, the idea came to me because of a lot of anecdotal evidence. Friends of mine were getting pushed out of their very big jobs that they had had for 20, 25 years and then struggled to be hired anywhere else. They couldn't find work. I thought that was anecdotal. I did a little bit of research. Turns out that 56% of workers 50 plus get pushed out of their long-term jobs. And of those people, only 10% will ever earn as much as they once did. How are people getting pushed out? They're getting pushed out by not getting raises. You get flat pay, or getting demoted or passed over for promotions. Restructuring is a big one, right? And they're given less responsibility or put in a position that they're not interested in. Longer hours, they get treated poorly by supervisors, and of course, layoffs, things like that. Now, Richard, I imagine it's not hard to imagine that has really deleterious and staggering
It's
mental health, emotional, mental
it
issues
really
and
it's
on
I've
impact on
seen it
people.
I've seen it over and over again. I think it's important for us to have this conversation because there are all kinds of spin-offs of that, not the least of which, very important, is people feeling shame, humiliation, having it affect their self-esteem, that they even are having a reaction to an experience like that. So I think it's important to more or less put that to quantify that in a way, and to normalize it. That these guys, quite a number of years ago, came up with a rating scale of stressful life events, going all the way, here we go, going all the way from death of a spouse down to something as simple as Christmas. These these numbers that are next to these events are the weight or the impact that these events have on people. And if you look carefully at this, I think if we look at it, I think it's number 5 or 8 is job change. So I think just that's enough of that scale. We don't have to be distracted by that anymore. I think my point in showing you all this is that it's normal. It's normal
Well,
to feel
it's impactful. It's very impactful
profound.
in terms of mental emotional health. Certainly, and breaking that down a little bit, Richard, and you certainly know more
Yep.
than I do. Um, let's just start off with the shock of it, right? Because I imagine being in the appropriate demographic and age range, being a man in his late 50s. I can certainly, first of all, there's just the genuine fear, right? What if this happens to me? What am I going to do? I know what the job market, I know what lies ahead of me and how scary that is, right? So there's just the fear that you live with, even if you are employed day to day. You go to sleep at night and wondering, how many days do you have left? And then there's the shock of this reality because um, you know, we grew up in a time historically where you felt like by the time you were in your 50s that you were pretty set in your career. You had steady work, you had a good job, you were able to save some money, and could plan for your retirement, not get retired at a moment's notice. So just there's a lot there, right?
Yes, absolutely. It really shakes people to their core. And you just mentioned without defining them. Some of the phases of reaction. This is like experiencing.
Well, I'm just the dumb guy. You're the smart guy. So tell me how smart I really am.
Okay, you're very smart. Uh, because you mentioned it's like disbelief, denial. Okay, you deny the impact. Then profound sadness, anger, and then self-blame. You start to doubt your own effectiveness and start to blame yourself for having had this happen to you. That really can shake a person to their core. And uh, that kind of experience, I mean, it really, if you are able to put that into some kind of a realistic context, it's really helpful. It's a very tough thing to go through, and I've gone through it
Well, it's even a
with
tougher
my
thing to go
patients.
through alone because again, you
Yes.
talk about the shame, the humiliation, and all those are, real feelings that men feel, and that prevents them from, again, the whole premise of the show, right, is prevents them from
Mhm.
talking about it. They don't tell their friends, sometimes they don't even tell their family, right? And so now they have this weight, they have this stress and anxiety, and they're going through it alone.
Yes, and relative, sometimes completely alone, sometimes relatively alone. There are examples that I can recall of men who've had that happen, and it takes them a week to even tell their wife what happened. They're getting dressed normally, going out the door in the morning, and coming back at night. That's a tremendous burden. And not being able to, not I think the main thing that you're getting at there, and I agree with you, is that it's not the kind of thing that's supposed to happen. It's not normal. It's not what's expected. It's not what's expected of the man, right? We're really focusing on men. Happens to women too, but we're
Well,
focusing on men right now. It's not,
right.
it's something that's not supposed to happen. And if the unexpected happens like that, where there's no warning, a person is bound to feel that they did something wrong. And that is going to prevent them from talking with people. And it may really impede their ability to move forward and reshape themselves, reform themselves, re-employ themselves.
Well, reemploy, but what you just said, I think, is really, really important. I think we should dive into that a little bit. You said something about reforming themselves, right? And a lot of times that's what is required. The job that you have done for the past 20 years may not be the job that you do for the next 20 years, right? And you have to kind of reinvent yourself. But that is really powerful. Think about that for a second, right? And especially men, I think a lot of our self identity, our self worth is wrapped up in what we do for a living, right? So it's
Unfortunately,
tied to
that's
our work,
true.
it's tied to our career, it's tied to our earning and providing for our family. And then when we don't do that, there's all these feelings of failure and inadequacy. We have a lack of purpose. There's the languishing that you just described. But it's so much more than a job, right? And it really is your identity and your self-worth. And then if I'm not that, then who am I? What am I? Do I have any? What is my value? Right. I mean, those are
Well,
really, really big things to have to unpack and deal with. And again, men don't tend to talk about it with anybody. So these are the things going through their head that they're grappling with, and they're doing it alone.
I've had the good fortune, actually. I think it's been my good fortune to work with um, quite a number of guys in that situation and to help them through it. I can think of one fellow who had a pretty substantial executive role, and he got ousted. and he couldn't get anything for a while, and he couldn't stand being unemployed. So guess what? He became a limo driver, which gave him a purpose, a place to go and something to do on a daily basis. It took him about 6 months. In my experience, at least, and this is some years ago, but in my experience, that's about how long it takes a guy to recover and get reemployed, whatever it is. Um, if he's going to go into a different line of work, maybe it takes a little bit longer. But finding something suitable takes time, and it's surviving that time that's really, really critical for
Well, talk about,
the
I mean,
men
you
and for
probably
their
know that better than I
families.
do. Talk about surviving that time, because in the, um, you know, during that period of time, again, I imagine, we go through an identity crisis, a crisis of, what talk about how do you navigate that? How do people navigate that?
Um,
Or I guess it's different for everybody, you're going to tell me.
yeah, well, yeah, I am, but I think it's generalizable. Uh, Navigate it by talking to people who you trust and who you know are in your corner. So people who will realistically encourage you. Uh, a lot of times, uh, people get ousted from jobs that may not, if they really think about it, may not be a good match, may never have been a really good match for them. And sometimes it works out that the reforming or the reemployment in something that is a better fit turns out to be better. And
Are you going to tell
having
me that
faith,
everything happens for a reason?
I, I, you know, I think you know me well enough to know that I'm not some kind of a Pollyanna. No. Well, yes, there's a reason for everything, but not every reason relates to the person who gets ousted.
Well, I want to go back to something else that you said, because I think you glossed over it, and I want to go back and really and emphasize it, because it's less about the job and losing the job and more about reaching out and connecting. It's about having your self worth, or the value that others see in you, whether you see it in yourself or not, that others see in you, and it's not tied to your career. As you said, to reach out to people who believe in you, people who are in your corner, people who you trust. And I want to emphasize there, and I was going to be facetious about it, but I'm going to be really serious about it and say that there are people out there in your life that love you and value you, not because of what title you hold or how much power or influence you hold or what favors you can do for them, but they actually love you for who you are as a human being, and that what you do is irrelevant. And those are the people, and you need to see, in other words, what you do for a living is irrelevant, not what you do as a human. In other words, your value is intrinsic. It's intrinsic in you as a human. It's not, and you can tap and to know and to trust that you can reach out to those people. They are there and they are for you, and they're not going to think less of you.
I think that it's possible to feel that naturally while you're in a position that people aren't attracted to you or aren't interested in you, don't like you solely because of your job. That's easy to feel when you're in the job. It's what happens afterwards when you feel so diminished that it's hard to remember what the relationships were really about, because a life event like this changes you, maybe temporarily, maybe permanently, but it changes you. And sometimes if you can figure out a way to make it change you in a positive direction, that's a good thing. And somebody may have accidentally done you a favor by hurting you
Glass
and
half
making
full.
you rise to the occasion.
Let me also just say one other thing. You put a number on something that I want to be really, really careful about. You said, oh, something about 6 months for men to kind of get over it and move on and or to get rehired. Listen, I know guys that were that wanted to be rehired full time somewhere, but again, were consulting for 7 years before they got rehired somewhere again. So I want to be really careful that let's not put a number on it. It may be longer for someone and may or for yourself. That doesn't I don't want to put a number on it. And it's getting harder and harder. And one of the things that we talked about before too that I want to emphasize is normalcy. We said this isn't supposed to happen. It may not have happened, in our parents or grandparents' generation, but it happens now. Like I said, 56% of workers 50 plus are getting pushed out of their jobs. And it's getting harder and harder to find new jobs. I read something here that really stunned me, and it's talking about once you are forced out or pushed out of your job, um, to look for age-friendly jobs. And I'm thinking, what is an age-friendly job? Well, so happens that I found some definitions there. And age-friendly mostly had to do around with, less physicality, as you get older, um, things like that. But schedule flexibility, and because what people 55 plus, they want flexibility, they want autonomy. They want shorter commutes. Um, those sorts of, they want to be able to leverage their experience and their social and communication skills, things like that. Now, it turns out that these supposedly age-friendly jobs, guess who else is highly attracted to those same jobs? Recent college grads, your Gen
People much
Zs,
younger, because it
people
sounds
much
like it sounds
younger,
like a
who
good
are
gig.
also much cheaper, right? And um, and it was funny because then the stats a few years old, but just to kind of back up that idea, um, it was a Forbes article. This is going back to like 2021 or 2022. It's a few years old, but it's not terrible. Said that new jobs for people under 55, there were 2.7 million new jobs were created or filled by people under 55. People 55 plus, 20,000. 2.7 million versus 20,000. So it's
That's
real.
that's
It's not
startling.
you. I just want to throw that out there again. If there's someone out there having living this experience and saying, what the hell has happened? What's wrong with me? I want to say to you as the person going through it. I want to say to you as the family and friends that um, need to support those people in your life. There's nothing wrong with you. I mean, there might be something wrong with you, but there's nothing wrong with you. This is just the reality that we find ourselves in, and it sucks. It's hard, and it has these really it impacts
Right.
us.
And I think that if you go into a job search, you go into a job interview feeling just not feeling it about yourself, feeling that you're not desirable. That's a really hard way to sell somebody on hiring you. So it's important to take steps to neutralize, so we say, the powerful impact of the experience so that you can lift up and take the next step.
And it's funny that you say that too, because here we are talking about authenticity, talking about being real, talking about being honest, talking about being vulnerable. And you are so right. In certain situations, you got to put on the mask and go in there and and even if you have to pretend to be confident, pretend to be confident. So I guess, maybe there's a time and a place to be authentic and vulnerable, but I think that that's one thing that we wind up wearing that mask of confidence 24/7 around everybody and every situation. And I think what we're saying is not that there's not a place for that, maybe still, certainly going into a job interview, maybe one, but to carve out some safe spaces and to reach out to people in your life where you don't have to put on that mask. You don't have to be confident and strong, and you can be nervous and scared and and whatever it is that you're feeling, because it's real.
You
It's
know,
okay.
yeah, you're right, and there's a danger. I've seen it be dangerous if something like that happens to someone who doesn't do all the things that you just said, who doesn't let down and just be honest with friends and family. I've seen it in my practice. I've seen terribly tragic outcomes from that, from the effect of uh, too much pride and not enough honesty,
I
basically.
see Mark's popped up there, and so let me wrap up this section because I'm imagining he's going to want to bring some other people into the conversation. But when you talk about very tragic or outcomes, one of the data points again that I want to share with everybody so that we can back up what we're saying is that the fastest increase in suicide rates is men 65 and over. Let
Say
me
that
let that
again.
sink in for a second. I'm going to say
Say
it
it
again
again.
because most people associate high suicide rates with young people, the teenage angst and all of that. The highest rate of increase of suicides is 65 plus. Really? Yes, really. I'm not saying it's the highest rate today. The highest rate is actually within that 35 to 55 combined, but the highest rate of increase is. And let's think about this, right? People are getting forced out of their careers at 55 plus. Things like Social Security and other things are getting pushed out closer to 70. Life expectancy is getting pushed is closer to 80, right? Having to People and men are living a much more significant, a much longer period of time. More of their lives are being lived post career.
Okay, I
And
just want
what
to say
does
one
that
thing. Let me
mean?
just comment. Let me comment there because there are lots of determinants to suicide. And if you look at this
There
at
are.
the 65 plus age category, we're also talking about other losses that they may experience. We're talking about deteriorating health, general health. All of those things contribute. But
And
I
we
think
talk
I
about
think we
all
have to
those
draw.
things on this show. I want to be conscious of time. We talk about all of those things on this show, right? And that's why we have a show that every week we talk about a different social, cultural, psychological, religious. It could be any number of these factors and or these things that are pulling on us that can that affect us, affect our mental health and our in very significant ways that we may or may not even be aware of, but that we certainly don't talk about. And that, as I think, is a good place to close out, Mark, maybe, and say, and that is what the show is all about, where we openly talk about the things that nobody wants to talk about.
Very grateful to you both. Love the conversation. Let me do a few things. First of all, if you want to get in on the conversation, make a comment, share something, ask a question, please raise your hand. If you don't know how to raise your hand on Zoom, go to the bottom of your screen. You'll see a thing that says raise hand. Just click on that. Second, Jeff and Richard hope that this conversation, while not meant to be advice about treatment, will encourage men to seek qualified professional help if you feel you need it. So again, this is not meant to be advice about treatment, but it is meant to spur a conversation and hopefully get folks who need treatment to get it. I want to ask you guys a few follow-ups and ask you to flesh some things out. First of all, and again, if you want to get in the conversation, please raise your hand. Just talk more about what would your advice be to someone who has someone in their life who's going through this? What's the proper way to approach them to see if they need help or to help them if you're pretty confident that they do?
Well, I think there are a couple of things to say about that. First, on an interpersonal level, honesty. So it falls on deaf ears to say things like, "Oh, sweetheart, everything is going to be all right." I don't know that's something that somebody can really internalize and accept. But to say, "We'll get through this together," taking that approach of coming up alongside the person and saying, "I'm here for you. I'm here to help you. We're here to work it out. Let's move forward together." I think that's probably the thing that I think is probably the most important when somebody has a loved one in their life who's sharing it. Because let's face it, if a spouse gets in that situation, if a guy gets in that situation, his wife is in a situation also, and they have to pull together in order to get out of it. And I think that's my first reaction to that. Jeff, I don't know if you have anything else to add to that, but that's my first reaction.
Yeah, I think my first reaction is that the tendency is that the man, more often than not, if you were to ask him what's the matter or what's wrong, you're going to get one of a couple of different answers, right? Nothing, fine, or I don't know, right? That's usually what happens, and that's okay. I think the main thing is to make sure that whoever it is that you're concerned about knows in no uncertain terms that you are there for them. Whatever it is that they're going through, they're not going through it alone. You're here for them. You're there with them. You're going to figure it out or get through it together. And you don't have to, not to push. You don't have to name it. You don't need to have the whole conversation right there. Sit with them. Maybe, you just let them know in a small way. Maybe hold their hand, put your arm around, just sit with them, whatever, but show up and show up consistently so that they don't feel alone.
Again, if you want to be in on the conversation, please raise your hands. I've got a few more I want to ask these guys, but then we'll go to the community. Kids, explaining it to kids, whether they're young kids or grown-up kids, what's the best way to grapple with that? Because obviously for a lot of men, you've talked a lot about spouse, but for a lot of men, they're kids, and dealing with that is a huge issue.
That's a powerful question. Thank you, but that's a powerful question because it has a lot to do with, you're right, it has a lot to do with the age of the child. You can't hide it. Anybody who has children knows that you can't hide anything from a kid. They know something's wrong, and instead of knowing there's something wrong and not knowing what it is, it's better to define it. You don't have to say exactly, because some kids are too young to really get that, but say that there's a problem. Say that, there's a problem that we're all going to work out together. For a while, we may not be able to spend the kind of money we used to, whatever it is, but everyone's going to pull together, because you raised a terrific point. And I think it's more important for young kids. I think that, late adolescents can absorb this kind of thing better than a 5, 7, or 9-year-old. So they
Well,
need mom and dad to be steady figures in their lives, and they become a priority. And by the way, that prioritization of the kids is a very strong motivator to move forward. And mom and dad have to move forward together. One thing I want to say is that, not every marriage has uh, two spouses that are getting along all the time. And something like this can cause a rupture in an already rocky relationship. So the thing to really mostly avoid is to say, what do you mean? What do you mean you lost your job? How did that happen? Why did that happen to you? You can't really, that's disastrous to ask those questions.
yeah, that's interesting, Mark. Yeah, because when you're talking about, are you talking about addressing the loss of a job to a
Yeah.
child, or
Yeah.
just, yeah, yeah, I think it is a, I think you need to, I think with anything with children, um, it's really important to be honest. That doesn't mean that you have to overshare. I think with children, I think the rule of thumb that I've lived by is that you meet them where they are and you answer the questions that you're asked. When they stop, and you answer them directly, honestly, and don't offer any more information. And when just answer the question. And when they stop asking the question, they've probably absorbed about as much as they can. So that takes care of, what do you tell, a 5-year-old versus a 15-year-old? Because based on their level of understanding, they're going to ask more or better or deeper questions, right?
I have
The other
one.
thing is that,
Can I just give you an amendment to that? Let me just add
okay,
something to that. Children tend to be very self-referential. So if something's going wrong, children who have a much smaller sphere of reference, shall we say, think that whatever's going wrong is about them. So it's very important to be reassuring and to stay constant with the
well, that was
kids.
the second half of what I was going to say. And certainly you're the expert, but I would say, yes, reassure them. You don't want to hide it. You don't want to lie to them. That's not, I don't recommend that. But you do want to reassure them that they're fine, we're fine, and it's not whatever feelings that you're projecting, it's not about them, as you're saying, right? It's something else. And that it's going to be okay. We're going to figure it out, mommy and daddy,
Yeah.
so that
All right.
you want to have that sense of stability and security in the home, especially for a young child.
All right. For those of you not raising your hands, let's get over the sense of irony that you don't want to have a conversation. Please raise your hand.
We run into this
Matt.
all the
Yeah.
time, by the
Matt.
way. We
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
people that watch and listen
Yeah.
to our podcast, and they tell us
Yeah.
how much they enjoy it, which we really appreciate. And we say, "That's great. Can you
Yeah.
like it? Can you share it? Can you tell your friends?" Oh no,
Yeah.
tell
Matt.
Well,
anybody I'm
Well,
listening.
Matt.
I'm
Yeah.
looking at a comment here.
Yeah.
I'm looking at a comment from Henry Tenenbaum. He's quoting 2022 data in the 75 plus
Yeah, I
that
saw that pop up.
Yeah. Hold on. Hold
yeah,
on.
the
Let me
highest
get
rate of
let,
suicide.
let me get to Max if I could. Matt rather.
Okay, go
Matt,
ahead.
welcome in. Matt, welcome in.
Oh,
Question
hi,
for
Matt.
Richard.
Okay.
Question or comment for Richard or Jeff and Jeff.
Sure. So a comment that will lead to a question. So I was already excited for this new show, and that was before I knew what tonight's topic was. And it really hits home for me, both because I turned 55 earlier this month, and because I saw this happen to my own father. So my dad was a defense contractor for 30 years. It was all classified, so he couldn't tell me. But then at 57 or 58, he came home from work. Actually, I was out of college, but they laid him off. And this is a guy who did the radar for the AWACS, did the F-18 radar, worked on the design of the lunar camera lens. So if you've seen Buzz and Neil Armstrong, that my dad built that lens. And one day it was just like, thanks, see ya, gone, no gold watch, no nothing. Now, I was out of college and I had just started working at a startup company. I was like employee number 5 there when I got this news. And it led me to think, I'm next. It was a tech startup company, and one thing about technology is that it's very hard to stay current. One of the benefits of college is you get to spend 3 or 4 years learning the new stuff. And if you've been out of college for 30 years, that opportunity kind of passes you by. And so I switched, and I'm now a college professor. So I have a little extra job security. So here's my question to you. And you had a very evocative thing where you said that men spend more of their lives out of their careers. And you talked about how to deal with that and support systems. But short of everyone becoming a tenured college professor, what can be done? Like, how can you try to inoculate yourself? And by the way, it's not all wine and roses. I did not get tenure at my first academic job. Had a very public firing. I don't wish that on anybody. But what can be done short of, because it is really a tournament, right? Unless you become one of those senior managers who's running the company, you are more expendable, and there's going to be cheaper and higher skilled people.
By the way, even if you're running the company, I've seen some CEOs recently get forced out by the board of directors. So everybody's got a boss, everybody answers to somebody, and everybody is potentially on the chopping block.
I am really fascinated by the transition you made, Matt, from being in the, I don't even quite know how to phrase it, but going from being in a corporate environment to making that transition to being a college professor. I think that's really quite an amazing thing to have done. How'd you do it?
I started my PhD at age 35.
Wow.
Which is when most people already have tenure. They're already done, and then they can enjoy life for 30 years. But I was the oldest PhD student at Harvard, I think. And it was interesting. A lot of people asked me, what took you so long? Why did you waste the first 10 years of your life? But it gave me a lot of stories to tell students when I teach, and gave me some research ideas too.
Well, life experience is really important. Now, here's the critical question, and then I'm going to sort of try to answer your question. And that is, how do you like being a professor?
Oh, it's an amazing job. It really is.
And that's what I want people to take away, because when the rug gets pulled out from under you, that's not it. That doesn't have to define you or anything. You have another career, and it sounds like you really are finding it really rewarding, and you're really enjoying it. And I think that's amazing. And so that's really, to answer your question, I look to your own life experience and I say, think about what it is that you're passionate about, what you enjoy, what your skill sets are, and go out there and reinvent yourself. Maybe even start your own podcast. I mean, that looks like it's a popular thing.
Yeah. Matt, thank you. Grateful to you. Please stay part of the community. Stephen, welcome in. Thank you for joining What's on Your Mind.
Thank you. This is really a good program. But I have an issue here. I mean, I know, Mark, you said we don't want to talk about the type of treatment that a professional would give. And it's all nice to say, go to your wife and say, we're in this together, tell your children what's going on. But if I'm in this situation and someone is telling me to see a professional, my initial reaction is going to be, I don't need a professional, or what is a professional going to do for me? And unless someone can tell me what a professional is going to do for me and how that professional is going to help me, I'm not interested. So I've known Richard for, I don't want to tell you how many years, but I would like him to answer that question.
Richard.
Sure. I'll take the challenge, Steve. I think what you do, what one does, is first listen and find out what the impact has been, and then help a person. Well, find out what the impact has been, and find out about the person, and work with them to rebuild their strengths, to evaluate their vulnerabilities, and in whatever sphere it is, and help them to work that through so that they can feel better about themselves. And uh, again, not being prescriptive here, but a responsible professional would make a full assessment of the person's need. Sometimes this kind of thing can throw a person into a really bad depression, and they really, they become paralyzed. They can't function. So when they go to a qualified professional, that person will make that assessment, make a hierarchy of needs, and address things. That's what any professional does. You make an assessment of the problem, and you make a list of things you have to address. You start with the most serious and then work your way down. Does that answer your question?
I would say from a less clinical perspective, having the benefit of help for many years, I would say we all go through and experience, for lack of a better term, various types of trauma. Certainly losing your career after 20, 25 years, whatever it is it's a trauma. And it affects us in very profound ways, and maybe in ways that we don't even fully appreciate. We're not even conscious or aware of. And through treatment and therapy and help, they can help to bring a lot of this to light, where we can unblock some of the things that there's some behaviors and there's some defense mechanisms and there's some things that we all carry with us and that we all do all the time. And it's just a part of who we are. And sometimes it serves us well because it makes us stronger and keep us going. But sometimes it doesn't serve us well, and it actually holds us back and blocks us, and prevents us from bringing our best self to whatever it is that we're doing. And that comes through in a job interview, that comes through with your friends, with your family. You wind up, you can reframe some things, and it can help significantly. But I know that therapy or professional help may not be within everybody's reach, but I think that's why it is really, really important. And that we believe in our show, that it's really important to try to dispel some of these myths and to break down some of these stigmas, and find a friend, a sibling, find somebody that you can really be honest with and have those real conversations. Bring your true, authentic, vulnerable, real self to a conversation, and admit, maybe to yourself for the first time, what you're really thinking and feeling and going through.
Steve, thank you. Barry, I know you're in the midst of juggling there, but welcome in. Thanks for being part of it. Question or comment?
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I'm a longtime viewer of your shows over the last year or so, and obviously, I think new to this, but I'm interested in a couple of things. Richard and Jeff, I'd like to know. I'm curious what your backgrounds are. Obviously, you're very well versed in this, but primarily, a couple of things. You spoke about something earlier regarding getting to a certain age and fearing what could come. And that's something that's been on my mind a lot lately. I'll be 59 in a few months, and I'm hoping to have another 5 to 10 years in the workforce. I work for a large company, and I feel pretty good about it. But there's risks all the time, and seems like the older folks are the ones to go. They're the ones that are walk away for one reason or another. I'm becoming one of those older folks, so that's a little frightening. I got a late start on our retirement. My wife and I both did, so I'm we're getting there, but we're not there. Secondarily, so one of the things I'm doing is it was brought up, what do you do to protect against that? I've recently started a side gig trying to do something that I think I can do into my retirement, that I hope will translate into at least supplementing my retirement, if not becoming a primary income. I don't expect it to be a primary income, but it's something I can ramp up over the next 5 years and hopefully turn it into something, that's worthy. But just kind of curious what your thoughts are on some of that. I don't really have a question per se, but other than hearing some of your background stuff.
Yeah, I would say
Thanks.
in response to that, yes. So just to provide a little bit of background then, um, I'm I'm 59, so I'm right there with you, brother. Um, I've been in marketing for technology companies for most of my career. And again, marketing and technology are both really hard to keep up with. I mean, marketing today and marketing, we had this, we didn't even talk about digital marketing when I was in college. Digital marketing was something we talked about later, much, much later. And guess what we call it now? Marketing. It's not digital. It's just like we used to say that, I have a smartphone. Now it's just a phone, right? So keeping up with the latest trends and the latest technologies, I hear you, it's hard, and you can't rest on your laurels, and I get that. I've done the same thing where I've started some side gigs that I'm hoping can ramp up, and that's sort of my insurance policy, or potentially a supplemental income when I'm ready to retire. I'll be very honest. The other part was I was getting to the point in my life where I felt that I was making money for the company and for the executives and for other people, and I was very successful. Um, but it didn't, and it was necessary because I've got kids right now. I've got one in grad school, one in undergrad, so I've got a big nut to crack too. I've got big expenses right now too, and I feel that pressure every freaking day. Um, and but I didn't feel like it was like, okay, I'm fifth now. I'm 59. This is going back a few years. I'm like, what's it all mean? I didn't feel like I was leading a life of purpose or meaning. Like what happens? I start thinking about the inevitable. I mean, I'm not there. I'm not there yet, but you get to a certain age, you start to think about those things. And I'm like,
Yep.
and that's really where, I was looking for something meaningful and purposeful to do. That's honestly where this podcast started. And I can tell you, what I've told Mark is I'm not against making money from it, but we don't make a nickel from this. This is just purely to hopefully give back, pay it forward, help and touch other people's lives in a positive way. That makes me feel good. So yeah, I mean, I think it's all those things. I don't think there's a magic pill or or anything like that. I think it's keeping your mind sharp. I think it's challenging yourself, being open to new experiences. Richard, this is brand new for you, and you've got your
Oh my
philosophy
God.
of say
Oh my
saying just say
God.
yes.
This is a new undertaking, which in a million years I would have never expected to be here tonight talking to all you people this way. Uh, but I will, it's a tough question for me to answer, but an easy question for me to answer. It's easy because I got lucky early in life. And I have been very lucky. I graduated from medical school. I did a very prestigious residency. I had a series of really good jobs. And from 1980 to the present, I've been in part, and now most recently for a lot of years, my own boss. I've been in private practice and I've been very fortunate. I've had a job that has been extraordinarily rewarding on a personal level to work with and to help a lot of people. But my experience is not, I'm answering your question, I'm being quite honest about it. I consider myself to be an extremely lucky man because those things, I think those things broke my way, you know, uh, and I'm just filled with gratitude about that. But that's part of the motivation that I joined up with Jeff, because this is a very important project that we're doing. To me, it's very important, and it continues. It's a way for me to continue to do what I've been doing for 45 years, but to reach a much wider audience, I hope. So I don't know if that, Barry, I don't know if
No,
that answers
absolutely.
your question.
I think it's really, this is an important platform. I think it really lends itself to two-way in general, because I think um, I've been an evangelist for what you're talking about for years now. Ever since COVID is when I kind of discovered it for myself, that there's a gap. And as older men, I hate even using that term because I don't think I'm old, but I'm good. Apparently, everybody else does. So
We don't, but we are.
yeah. So, but there's a gap here, and it's hard to make friends at this age, new meaningful friends. You're not allowed to talk about your feelings because that makes you a wimp, or there's a lot of other words, pejoratives we could call in. But uh, but it does help to have somebody to talk to, and at least have one friend or two friends that you can really open up to. And I'm lucky. Much like you, Richard, I'm very lucky. But I know there's a lot of holes out there and a lot of guys they're suffering silently. And this is something I think can help out, potentially help out a lot of people. I wish you the best. I'm glad
Thank
to be a
you.
part of it. I'm really glad that Mark brought this up. I sent him an email saying as much earlier today. So
Yeah.
it's
Very,
really
very,
important.
Thank you,
Barry,
Barry.
thank you, Barry.
It's also a very important thing that you made me think of. And I want to say this explicitly if it hasn't already been implied. Some folks have actually said that they have a hard time opening up and talking about it with somebody.
Yeah.
Somebody earlier said, how do you get somebody that you're worried about, that you or care about, get them to open up and start to talk about it? One of the things that I've heard, and it really makes me feel good, I think it's wonderful, is they've used our show to facilitate the conversation. Instead of saying that you're this or you're that, or I'm feeling this and I'm feeling that, or whatever, which you may or may not even be able to articulate, you may or may not feel safe enough to articulate, to say, hey, did you listen to that show? Oh, you didn't hear? Listen to that, and then let's talk about it. It's kind of interesting.
Yeah.
Right. It gives that sort of that safe way to kind of wade in and start a conversation. It's sort of like, not me, but I have this friend. Right?
I know a guy.
And that's okay. That's an okay place to start, just to start somewhere. So if this show can be that bridge, facilitate a conversation, fantastic.
Very, very grateful to you for what you said and had you said it. So thank you. I hope you come back. Very
I
grateful
will.
to you. Thank
Thanks.
you. Gentlemen, tell folks where your one-way show occurs and where they can hear it.
Hopefully we'll be doing, well, we'll see. We tried this out and we'll see how it goes. I think it went well. So hopefully we'll be doing more of these. But our original one-way podcast is where you would get most of your podcasts. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Amazon Music. We're on Spotify. We have our own website, AuthenticConnections.online. So we've got lots of content out there. If you found this interesting or helpful at all, which I hope you did, I encourage you to go check it out.
Okay. I'm
And
grateful
Mark,
to everybody.
thank you very
Yeah.
much. Mark, thank you for the opportunity.
Our pleasure. We're really, really excited about this as a topic for two-way because, as Barry said, and as I said at the top, we think this is a vital topic for two-way conversation.
I'm just sorry we didn't get to Carrie or Glenn or there's some
They'll
other
come.
hands up.
They'll come back next time. We're at time. We're grateful
Okay.
to both Jeff and Richard, obviously, and to Noah and Lori and Michael for producing, and grateful to all of you for joining. For those of you who ask questions, and stay tuned on my Substack, on my Twitter feed to learn more about future opportunities to convene. But grateful to you all.
Thank you to
Jeff
everybody
and
else who
Richard, thank
shared
you
their
so much.
story. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Have a great day, great evening, everybody, and we'll see you soon.